So Rebecca Watson made this video recently. This just came out 5 days ago, talking about Richard Dawkins' link to the Epstein files. But 6 years ago, she made this video on Lawrence Krauss and Jeffrey Epstein. And if you don't remember who Lawrence Krauss is, you probably know his face. You probably definitely know his face if you're in this bubble. And then, of course, this is the picture that was making the rounds, along with this picture here, showing a bunch of people you might know, Dennett, Jeff Bezos, a bunch of other people in the sphere, apparently on Epstein's plane. Now, this is from a Slate article here that mentioned all of these people here. Daniel Dennett, who's now passed, Richard Dawkins, Jared Diamond, Daniel Kahneman, I don't know how to say his name, and so forth. This is interesting to me because Richard Dawkins, hold on, also has a history of going after Rebecca Watson. If you don't remember Elevator Gate, allegedly it was Richard Dawkins who made her very uncomfortable in an elevator, allegedly, and she ended up getting just harassed and bullied on the internet. And I remember at that time in my life, I was just getting into like feminism fully, and I was fully going into that bubble. And I remember thinking like, hey, Rebecca did nothing wrong. Her video was very tame. She was just expressing frustration with how uncomfortable she was. And the internet, it became Elevator Gate. She became one of the most hated women on the internet for nothing, for absolutely nothing. His hate for her is so insane. It's in these emails. I need you to process the information that Richard Dawkins is such a transphobe, misogynist, disgusting person who hates Rebecca Watson with so much of his fiber that he mentioned her in the emails. Get ready, sit down and buckle up. It's crazy.
It happened again. That's right. I mentioned in the Epstein files again. You probably saw my first video on this topic. And if so, you probably came away from that thinking that I've spent the past.
And by the way, she's in the science bubble, if you guys don't know. So she's even more hated because she's a woman in science.
Decade being, just as awesome in my private life as I am in my public life. Like, you probably thought, wow, there's no way anything could come to light now to change my opinion of Rebecca. So I have to once again offer my sincere apology because, in the latest dump of millions of new files from Jeffrey Epstein's correspondences, more emails about me have come to light. And I'm sorry to say that your opinion of me is probably going to change because I'm actually even more awesome than you thought.
We're going to love her even more.
Okay, look, it's not often that a Cassandra like myself gets to see a bunch of people come around to agreeing that, she was right all along. So forgive me for this one video where I get just a little full of myself. If you missed the previous video for some reason, my name was in the first Epstein document drop because back in 2011, I criticized physicist Lawrence Krauss for defending his friend, Jeffrey Epstein, years after Epstein was revealed to be a pedophile running a sex trafficking ring. Unbeknownst to me at the time, Krauss immediately forwarded my critical emails to Jeffrey Epstein, and they whined about what a mean bitch I was. And then in
Literally! Imagine being that girl. Honestly, never felt more proud to be a woman. Never felt more proud to be a girl's girl today, girls. I cannot believe these loser men. These are the smart men in our society, by the way. These are the men that the atheist bubble, the science bubbles are like, these are the greatest men. These men they're so smart, And I'm sitting here like they are the most disgusting, perverted losers I have ever seen in my life. This makes me feel this makes me feel also very validated, as a lot of women watching this are going to feel so validated because all of these men talk about these guys like they're the most genius people when it's obvious to me they're just bigoted misogynists, but okay. And then now it's so obvious they all hang out together. Ugh, I feel so validated.
In 2016, Krauss emailed quite a bit with Epstein to get his advice on how to deal with BuzzFeed reporters who were investigating Krauss's long history of women reporting that he's
Okay, so this guy women were coming forward about him, Lawrence, right? And then he was like, yo, Epstein, you've dealt with this, right? Help a brother out. How did you deal with it?
Actually harassed or even assaulted them, because of course he did that. Epstein was able to evade justice for years after it was well known that he was running an international pedophile ring. So surely he must know how to help Krauss wriggle out of...
Is that not the craziest thing you've ever heard? Guys, when I first watched Rebecca Watson's stuff, when I watched her videos, I was like, this cannot be real. They are so brazen. They are so entitled. They are so confident. They are sending literal emails like, hey, Help me out. Help me get out of this thing that I did. This is crazy.
Some relatively tame attempted rape accusations, right? I'll be honest, I didn't really expect that there would be more interesting stuff in Epstein's emails that would relate to me, so I didn't even bother searching the new documents. I was wrong. Because helpful followers pinged me on social media to let me know that not only was I mentioned again, but this time it wasn't even directly from Lawrence Krauss. This time it was Richard Dawkins. Now, before I get into it, I'm going to give you a reason to stick around through the rest of this video. Over on Blue Sky, I got a little giddy and I announced that if I got a certain amount of likes, I would share some petty and embarrassing stuff about Richard Dawkins in this video. I got those likes within 5 minutes, so I'm going to do that. But first, I also said that if I got a ridiculous number of likes, I would also share some bonus fun stuff about Michael Shermer, who you may know as the editor of Skeptic magazine and recently ardent defender of fascism. Well,
stop. Okay. There is truly this boy bubble. That's why I say the boy bubbles. And there's different kinds of boy bubbles. They're not all the same. They're not all related, but all of them. And the one thing all of the specific kinds of boy bubble have in common is misogyny, is an entitlement, is this idea. This is why I say, like, as much as people want to say, oh, it's not misogyny, it's misogyny. Okay, Rebecca Watson's reputation, heck, my reputation, any woman in a space that is primarily male dominated is going to have to face misogyny. And that is the thing that is so hard to really embody and understand, because you like to think that if I just show up and if I'm qualified and if I say the same things and it doesn't matter. Okay, because I know you knew this way back in the day. When one of my first videos, when I was an atheist in the atheist community bubble, I made a video saying the same exact thing that another male creator said, so verbatim in terms of my opinion, that he retweeted it. Okay, he shared my video. It got over 1 million views and 99% of the comments were about the way I looked. That video is privated now. But the point is that and that was my awakening of leaving the atheist movement. I was like, okay, hold up. This movement that was so liberating to me when I was coming out of religion is now just a place where my opinion matters less because I'm a girl. And like, look, that even opinion I had all those years ago was still, not deconstructed and still honestly dripping with internalized misogyny myself. So it doesn't even matter. But the fact, like, it's not an opinion I would even say today, but it is kind of ironic, right? That I said the same thing a man did, but the video got people were so mad at me for this video. It's just kind of interesting. And that same man promoted the video. Isn't that funny?
It did get enough likes. So I'll start with a quick little fact about Michael Shermer. He was well known for two things at conferences. One, trying to have sex with as many women as possible, who would leave his room with a signed copy of his latest book and a Skeptic magazine pin. And two...
Oh, and by the way, Chet said the only thing that's important is how fuckable you are. It's truly gross. Oh, for the record, when I said all it was about the way I looked, they were telling me I was a whore. They weren't even telling me I was pretty. They were telling me I was stupid and I dressed like a whore and no one should take me seriously because of what I look like. Versus, it wasn't even, imagine if it was a video, because it wasn't a positive video. Like, they were so mad at me for simply existing. And I can't take her seriously. Why does she look like that? It wasn't even like, oh, she's hot or something. You know what I mean? It was like, I can't take her seriously because of what she looks like. Like, we shouldn't even listen to what she says. Crazy.
For delivering the most boring PowerPoint presentations in the history of conferences. So a couple of my friends came up with an idea to make them more enjoyable. They developed the game Schmingo. Whenever Shermer was scheduled to speak, friends would hand out Schmingo cards with squares like mentions libertarianism and slide with way too much tiny text on it. And we'd text each other our wins, but there was a special prize for anyone who had the guts to actually yell it out loud. And after he was accused of sexual assault, we joked about making the free middle square sex pest. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about Dawkins.
There's definitely a larger conversation we should have about making memes about sex offenders, but here we are.
Before I share the hot tea, I want to give you a brief overview of my history with him. Okay. For several years, we were polite to one another at events. I thought he was a nice guy. But in 2011, a few months after my post about Lawrence Krauss defending Jeffrey Epstein, I happened to be on a panel at a conference in Ireland.
Here we go. Listen up.
Ireland with Richard Dawkins called Communicating Atheism, in which I talked about some of the crazy misogynistic hatred I get by being a female atheist in the public eye, including a lot of misogynistic stuff from atheists. And a few days later, on July 2nd, Dawkins posted a comment on PZ Meyer's blog.
Hold on. Just example. Z I guess it's supposed to be like Francis, but Francis, whatever, die to Rebecca Watson. How the fuck is a male circumcision mutilation? Is it okay to cut off a hand because cutting off the hand is worse? No, female circumcision is not worse than male genital mutilation. 80% of the time, see type 1. MGM destroys the ability to have sex naturally. It's an infant, you sick cunt. How the fuck would you feel? Honestly, I mean, honestly, you deserve to be raped and tortured and killed. Swear I'd laugh if I could watch. I don't know. She said, message in response to my video at the time in which the state that male circumcision is unethical and should be illegal mentioned female genital mutilation can be much more debilitating. So it is true. Female mutilation, genital mutilation is far worse. The consequences are worlds difference from male circumcision, but any circumcision is unnecessary on children and we shouldn't be doing it. And we need to fix that. But it's obviously way worse for girls or for people with clitoris and vaginas. It's like totally different.
And a few days later, on July 2nd, Dawkins posted a comment on PZ Meyer's blog mocking me for complaining about the treatment I get, comparing me to a fictional Muslima who isn't allowed to drive and gets...
Dear Muslima, stop whining, will you? Yes, yes. I know you had your genitals mutilated with a razor blade and yawn. Don't tell me yet again. I know you aren't allowed to drive a car and you can't leave the house without a male relative and your husband is allowed to beat you or you will be stoned to death if you commit adultery. But stop whining, will you? Think of the suffering your poor American sisters have to put up with. Only this week I heard one. She calls herself Skeptic Chick. Do you know what happened to her? A man in a hotel elevator invited her back to his room for coffee. I'm not exaggerating. He really did. He invited her back into his room for coffee. Of course she said no, and of course he didn't lay a finger on her, but even so, and you, Muslima, think you have misogyny to complain about? For goodness sake, grow up and at least grow a thicker skin, Richard. Now, I just want you to remember, because I don't know if Richard Dawkins is literally the man who was in the elevator. That was just the rumor. I don't know if Rebecca ever told us who it was, but I would just like to say, all male atheists do this. Sam Harris does this. Richard Dawkins does this. They always go to attacking Muslims. They always go to Islamophobia to tell women in the West or however they want to say it. They're like, oh, we don't have it as bad as them. Even though we are literally facing so many issues here, this is how Christians, and this is, remember, Richard Dawkins considers himself culturally Christian, right? He's like, I don't want to be a Muslim. Islam is the most dangerous thing to the world. That's why I'm supporting Christianity, even though he is literally the atheist guy. Okay? That's why I watch people like Alex O'Connor who say things like, oh yeah, Richard Dawkins, I respect him. Do you respect this man? This is why I look at that man with a raised eyebrow as well, because I'm like, I know he's 26, but I'm like, bro, get it together. Okay? So I will just say that this is another red flag you have to look for with these men, is like, no man cares about women if the only women they ever think to care about is Muslim women. You do not care about Muslim women. You do not care about any woman, okay, if the only way you care about women is through Islamophobia.
Beaten by her husband. Wow, misogynistic and racist, who would have thought? Within hours of him posting that comment, I was being flooded with insults and death threats and rape threats from Dawkins fans, the likes of which I could not have even imagined at the time. My website got DDoSed. Google canceled my AdSense because people reported it as fraudulent. My entire family got doxxed and started getting threatening messages. Basically, my life was never the same. Even today, literally today, the day I am filming this video, I got a new really scary threat. It sucks. So on July 5th of 2011, after I got the site working, I posted about it in a blog post.
Oh, hold on, Chet says, how do these messages get found out? If you mean the message I just read out loud, he posted it with his full chest. Do you know what I mean? Like that, I don't know if that's what you mean, chat, but like, this is the craziest part, is these men are posting these comments with their full chest. They want people to read it. This is not secret. This is not a secret email. These are things they post proudly. Right? No.
Titled
no, this is not an email. Go back. Hold on. This is a post. Listen. This is an email. So this is an email. This email. But Richard Dawkins, this is not an email. This is a post.
Muslima's blog mocking me.
It's on a blog. He posted this on a blog. Just to, in case you guys are, just to separate it. So the original email was an email, but Richard Dawkins' post was in public. So, okay, just in case that was what we were confused about.
My entire family got doxxed and so canceled the day I'm filming this video.
Okay.
I got a new really scary threat. It sucks. So on July 5th of 2011, after I got the site working, I posted about it in a blog post titled The Privilege Delusion. Now, remember that title because we're
Get it? The God delusion.
going to be talking about privilege again soon. In that post, I mentioned that I thought it was an odd thing for him to have posted at all about this topic, but especially because he had just sat next to me on that panel and heard about all of the really awful things people send me and how it negatively affects me and also negatively affects other women in this movement and how it was turning women away from the movement. Unbeknownst to me, the day prior to my post, July 4th, 2011, Richard Dawkins reached out to John Brockman with a question. Brockman was a powerful New York literary agent who ran edge.org, which was bankrolled by Jeffrey Epstein. Brockman served as an important connection between Jeffrey Epstein and all of the various scientists and New York intellectuals that Epstein wanted to meet. And so his name shows up a lot in the files. Here's what Brockman looks like in a photo taken of him along with Steven Pinker, Daniel Dennett, Katinka.
So that's the guy on the very left, if I'm not mistaken, because I think this is Steven, this is Daniel Dennett. I don't know who this woman is, and then Dawkins.
And Richard Dawkins. From one of the times taken of him along with Steven Pinker, Daniel Dennett, Katinka Matson. Richard Dawkins from one of the times that they all flew together on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. So on July 4th, 2011, Richard Dawkins wrote to Brockman, "There's a rather nasty young woman called Rebecca Watson who..."
Oh, I thought he wrote this to Epstein. So he wrote this to John Brockman. Okay.
"Seems to be running some kind of witch hunt against Lawrence Krauss because of his defense of Jeffrey Epstein. There are people on her blog..."
Okay, but process this. Hold on. So just to be clear, so Slate reported this picture here in this article, the girls were always around. What's it like to be a scientist in the Jeffrey Epstein circle? And this was posted in 2009. And then this is here. So he is emailing. Okay. There is a rather nasty woman called Rebecca Watson. Note to self when men call women nasty, which is why women should be careful about using this word as well, because it is a very a misogynistic dog whistle, nasty woman, nasty.
Talking about organizing a walkout when Lawrence speaks at TAM in Las Vegas. "I remember that you told me something of the circumstances of Jeffrey's arrest and that his case is not as black as painted. Might you possibly remind of it? Thanks and greetings from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Richard." Brockman naturally...
Hold on, I want to read this myself. "There are people on her blog talking about organizing a walkout when Lawrence speaks at TAM in Las Vegas. I remember that you told me something of the circumstances of Jeffrey's arrest and that his case is not as black as painted." Interesting. That's great. Look, he even linked her blog. He linked her blog. Obsessed, bro.
Possibly remind...
And look at this. Who seems to be running some kind of a witch hunt against Lawrence Krauss because of his defense of Jeffrey Epstein. His defense of Jeffrey Epstein. His defense.
It. Thanks and greetings from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Richard. Brockman naturally immediately forwarded that letter to Jeffrey Epstein, which is how we...
Oh, okay, there it is.
We can all read and enjoy it now. What interesting timing this was. 3 months after Lawrence Krauss...
Yes, Chad, good catch, catch. Witch hunts, also another dog whistle, good catch. Especially since witch hunts were what? The murder of women and girls for either being too smart or too rebellious or too whatever, too much. Men justified hunting down women in the name of what? So when men commit miracles, they're God. When women do miracles, they're witches who deserve to be burned. Got it.
Alerted Jeffrey Epstein to my evil machinations. Dawkins has decided to seek out information so that he might hopefully debunk my reporting that Epstein is a pedophile. Just a few days after he posted an incredibly racist and sexist comment and was getting dragged online for it. Before I had even commented on it myself. Dawkins is mentioned in a lot of other files, but it's stuff like Epstein talking about hanging out with him and Krauss talking about getting him to the island.
Hold on, I'm going to see these. Hold on.
And was getting dragged online for it. Before I had even commented on it myself. Dawkins is mentioned.
So from Jeffrey, sent Wednesday, May 13th, a day before my birthday, to Kathy, arguing religion with Dawkins and Krauss. I'm on the pro-religion side. Of course he is. What are you up to? Kath, I think, still fun. Please no. Okay.
In a lot of other files, but it's stuff like Epstein talking about hanging out with him and Krauss.
I have some scientists, let's see, from Jeffrey, I'm having some scientists advisory board to Krauss to the island in November. You are, of course, invited. Try to come. Richard Dawkins, Marriott, D. Christina, Douglas Irwin, Era Flota, Wendy Freedom, Steve Winberg, Lawrence Krauss, John Mather, Peter Rilaro, Cynthia Scholes, Neil Shubin, and Sandra Vanderloo. Oh, okay.
Talking about getting
Sander
them
Vanderloo
to the island. But obviously, you know,
let's see, Lawrence Krauss. From Lawrence to Jeffrey. Okay, here's another question. Steve Pinker, who was going to come, as you know, cannot come because he's at a meeting in Mexico. I was at the same meeting with him a few years ago, but they didn't ask me to come back, smiley face. Turns out Richard Dawkins is going to be there too. And he has also just contacted me yesterday saying he has just checked and it is impossible for him to get to Mexico to St. Thomas in any reasonable time by plane, so he cannot make it. When I told him this would be a blow and that you were looking forward to him coming, he just emailed me and said that he was once flown on your plane with Pinker and Dennett to San Diego. I am assuming it is not practical to consider sending a plane for both Pinker and Dawkins in Mexico. If it were, I would contact Steve and see if he would be willing to come under those conditions. I don't expect to be the case, so no worries either way. Is he literally asking? He's like, hey, I want to fly on your jet, but I'm too afraid to ask you. But like, can I fly on your jet? He's literally like, I really, can you send your private? Literally, that's what he's doing. Rebecca puts a note saying, this one's particularly pathetic. Please, pues, send your private jet for Wicca Dawkins.
and we already knew Dawkins knew.
I'm sorry. Listen, this is very serious because there are real victims. But let me just tell you, I will never not be surprised at how pathetic men are. Men as a community who hate women are so pathetic. And remember, ladies, these are the men you were so worried about liking you. The most pathetic men to ever exist are all together, literally.
And hung out with Epstein because there are photos. These guys did not care about leaving evidence because, as I mentioned in that previous video, they thought that raping little girls was a normal thing that rich men are just allowed to do. And, you know, were they wrong? But this particular email is very funny to me because it really highlights how I got under Dawkins' skin without even trying, without even knowing. For me, you know, his comment, the Muslima comment, came out of nowhere. And then I watched as he blackballed me from every major skeptic, atheist, humanist organization around the world.
That's what happened. So Rebecca Watson came forward with her elevator story, which again, she made the most tame commentary, just saying, hey guys, like in the future, this is probably not the best way to ask a woman up to your hotel room for coffee. It's like 3 a.m. in the morning. We're trapped in an elevator together. It just felt really uncomfortable. And they ran with that of like, oh my God, were you raped? Are you saying you were raped? And she was like, I'm just saying it's uncomfortable. Maybe try a different method. And then literally like the men on the internet just went so hard for Rebecca. And then she was blackballed. Nobody wanted to talk to her. All the boys in the sphere I was in at the time were like, oh, this woman is crazy. This woman is unhinged. And I'm just sitting here like, she didn't say anything. Like she really just in the most nice way was like, hey, could you maybe just do it differently?
His employees let me know that a person could not even say my name in his presence without him blowing a gasket. And one volunteer even related how she saw him scream at the president of American Atheists for suggesting that I be invited to the Reason rally in Washington.
No way. At this time in September of 2011, Dave Silverman was heading up the Reason Rally Committee. There was still quite a bit of planning and promotion that needed to be done. So Dave asked Richard, Elizabeth, and Sean to make videos to promote the Reason Rally. Do you love the logic lobby, the Reason Rally, the your feelings don't care, in fact, don't care about your feelings committee? Like, you see how they always use these words that make them feel superior to you while they're throwing tantrums? The video Richard ended up making is still viewable. Richard was standing behind the podium and he asked Dave something along the lines of, what exactly is the Reason Rally? Dave started explaining it, and as he did, someone who was waiting in line outside opened the door to peek inside, and we could all hear a lot of noise. I rushed up the aisle and made a frantic shut the door, gestures at the people peeking inside, and they did. As I walked the 10 feet back, I couldn't hear everything Dave was saying, but I heard the name Rebecca Watson. Richard suddenly had a very angry look on his face, and I heard him almost shout, no, absolutely not. If she's going to be there, I won't be there. I don't want her speaking. And then Dave immediately replied, you're absolutely right. We'll take her off the roster. It's done. Richard huffed for a moment and Dave continued to placate him. And then he made the video.
DC. Today, obviously, it's more well known that Dawkins is a weird freak because in the years since then, he kind of went off the rails on Twitter, posting about dogs 69ing and crying.
Whoa. I'm going to need to read those, please. Thank you.
In the years since then,
I've seen a dog and bitch indulging in full 69. Males of many species, including Drosophila, lick female genitals before copulation. What? Is he saying bitch like an adult human woman, or is he saying bitch like a female dog? What?
Kind of went off the rails on Twitter, posting about dogs 69ing and crying because airport security took.
Bin Laden has won the airports in the world every day. I had a little jar of honey, now thrown away by the rule-bound what's this word? Dundridge's stupid waste. Oh my God, you're weird, bro.
His honey, etc. But back then I was really confused about what was going on with him. How had I accidentally pissed this guy off?
Wait, okay, pause. I need to pivot with you. Just stay with me for a second. Because I was wondering, okay, perfect time to share this story with you. Richard Dawkins accused of defending mild pedophilia. Stay with me here. Video 12 years ago, posted and covered by David Pakman, who we don't like because he's a Zionist. But look at this video. David Pakman, little baby David Pakman, covering this story. Listen to this.
Richard Dawkins has made some statements that some are considering to be a little bit odd. He essentially defended mild pedophilia. He said, Richard Dawkins, to kind of set the stage, is the evolutionary biologist who is known for being what some consider an outspoken atheist. He thinks he is just an atheist and that the term outspoken is assigned inappropriately to many atheists who simply state their views. He told the story to the Times Magazine of England that he was sexually abused when he was a kid. He says that a teacher put his hands in his shorts and that it didn't do lasting harm. And then he said, the exact quote was, an unidentified schoolmaster pulled me on his knee and put his hand inside my shorts when he was a child. And he said he didn't think that the abuse, which he referred to as mild touching up, did any of us any lasting harm. I guess it wasn't just to him that this was done. It was to some of his classmates as well. And his argument was, and I quote, I'm very conscious that you can't condemn people of an earlier era by the standards of ours, just as we don't look back at the 18th and 19th centuries and condemn people for racism in the same way that we would a modern person for racism. I look back at a few decades for racism in the same way that we would a modern person for racism.
Are you sure about that?
I look back at a few decades to my childhood and see things like caning, mild pedophilia, and I can't find it in me to condemn it by the same standards I would today. Lewis, your thoughts?
Well, I am
so, the one thing I will give myself credit for, and God knows I don't deserve it because I definitely, had my Christopher Hitchens phase, was I never liked Dawkins. I never liked him. And by the way, Christopher Hitchens, infamous misogynist, okay, wrote a whole article about how women aren't funny, and yet was the first journalist to volunteer to be waterboarded to prove that what we were doing in Guantanamo Bay was torture, and he's the one who exposed Mother Teresa for her bullshit. So, okay, at least Christopher Hitchens was a journalist, but, was a misogynist, Richard Dawkins, though, just absolutely always been the worst person ever. Just always been.
I wouldn't say he's defending pedophilia. I would say that it's not insane for him to think that the mild touching that happened didn't do him any lasting harm. And I don't think by him saying that means he's saying that it's okay that this type of thing happened. The condemning part I find a little strange. He says he's not going to condemn it by the same standards, but I guess in theory he could still be condemning it, at least mildly, if you will.
Well, that's what I wanted to show you from that. We'll go back to Rebecca. Listen. There is this narrative of we can't judge people based off what happened back in the day. I think we should be, this is my opinion. I think we should be able to judge people against the most modern standard of expectation. As a way to hold a new standard, we have to maintain it into the past and explain why it was wrong then as it is wrong now. Wrong is wrong, and yet we can understand why people had the idea in their minds that this was appropriate, but this doesn't change that it isn't. Okay? It does not change that it isn't. And that's the thing I want people to understand. That with my own family history, with the child marriages, I'm trying to explain to my family, it's not appropriate then, it's not appropriate now, it was never appropriate. There was no justification for it. But see, when they hear that, they're worried that that means that everything they thought about their life isn't what it is, or that there wasn't going to be a circumstance in which both of my grandparents were minors when they were married together, as an example, but my grandpa was 17 and my grandma was 10. You know what I'm saying? So now you have a village of adults that took advantage of two minors and forced those two minors into a situation in which maybe my grandpa never would have pursued this relationship if he was given a choice, because allegedly that was always the story. But the point is that the adults around them, this is the story, the adults around them forced them to marry. The story that they tell, I don't know if it's true, because, you know, families lie, is that my grandpa asked to be a priest and my great grandpa said no, because you're my only son. So you have to get married, right? Patriarchy. Okay, you have to get married. They pair them up. That's how they did it. They like arranged between the families who in the village would get married, because there was only so many Assyrians to marry. Okay? But then the story they tell you is also a way to digest the ugliness of the situation. No 17-year-old should be with a 10-year-old. When you look at the wedding photos for my grandma and grandpa's wedding, I have a picture from their wedding day. It is so fucking obvious my grandma's a kid. Like, my grandpa looks, honestly, for a 17-year-old, kind of grown, but he's not. He's still 17, but he looks, you know, and then next to her, it's just like, it's the weirdest photo to look at. Like, just looking at it, and you know what's crazier? Is that people in my family go, isn't this the cutest wedding photo? And then I have to look at it and be like, are we looking at the same photo? Like, just looking at it quickly, you probably don't think about it. But when you look at it, you're like, wait a second. And that's the problem. They don't know how to separate the love they have for my grandparents and the love they have for our family from the reality that our grandparents should never have been put in that position, specifically my grandma. My grandma should never have been put in that position, period, the end. And don't tell me, there's always this rumor in the family. They go, because I was like, so when do you think they consummated the marriage? And they go, oh, they didn't consummate it till after she got her period. I was like, so 12. She was 12. And he would have been 19? So a 12-year-old and a 19-year-old. They go, oh, no. She didn't have her first baby until she was 16. So they probably did it when she was 16. I was like, great. So she was still 16. Imagine being married for 6 years and you're only 16 years old. Imagine that. So in order for people to grow, for humanity to get better, we have got to be willing to say this was bad under every circumstance and should never have happened. And we need to move forward by never repeating this situation, right? And that was the point. But the point is, like, people are too afraid of what it will mean, you know? But it's happening. That's what I'm saying. Like, Epstein is not unique. Nothing about what's happening is unique to him. It's happening all over the world globally, you know? Chesed, what was the point of marrying her off at 10 then? To be honest with you, I don't fucking know, because nobody will give me a straight answer about the family history. That's the problem. Guys, I cannot even tell you how many variations of this story that I have heard. And I'm like, can somebody just tell me the real story, please? Why did this happen? And everyone has this. Nobody's willing to have the real conversation with me because it's too scary, I think, for them to process. And my grandma wasn't the only one. I have plenty of aunts that were married at 16 to my uncles who were in their 20s. But because those people, their mind had really successful relationships and marriages, because my cousins really loved their parents, it's really, and I know, by the way, I'm deeply empathetic to that. I am deeply empathetic to that our parents have controversial marriages and that, well, the world is thinking, ooh, it's gross. We love our parents. We love our family members. We love our aunts and uncles. And it's very hard. That's what's hard about it. That we love these people and nothing felt wrong to them. Nobody thought it was wrong, except the question is, how do we know if you didn't think it was wrong if you're not allowed to ask yourself if it was wrong? This is why conservatives think progressives make themselves sick, because they say, oh, it's only until you went to therapy and you really thought about it that you decided you were a victim. That's because I was never even given a chance in this construct to ask myself if I really wanted it or if in an ideal situation it would have happened. And that's why this is so devastating to people. It's so devastating to look back at your life that you thought was like a fun experience and to be like, oh my God, if I even think about it today in this context, I would be so angry if this was like somebody else's experience. It's kind of like your childhood. It's like, oh, hey, did you have a good childhood? Yeah, I had a good childhood. Yeah, my childhood was really good. Would you want it for your kids? And you're like, oh, no. And if you wouldn't want your childhood for your kids, then why? And it's, that's the part about being human that's really hard. Okay, I think that's what it is. That's what's so devastating about this whole process, honestly. Yeah, Discord said, I disagree. We can see the damage to this day. His selfish gene book was pretty good, but you could see his meanness in the moment in the meme section. He talks about religion. I always thought Dawkins was too obsessed with religion. That's why I never liked him as an atheist. His obsession, his billboards, his like fighting Christianity, it felt like you're obsessed. And now for the audacity of this man to sit here and call himself a cultural Christian because he's so Islamophobic. Oh my God. Oh my God. You know? Okay, back to Rebecca.
Off to this level. It was a few months later that a friend of mine mentioned a possible reason for Dawkins' meltdown. And it made a lot of sense, but I never talked about it publicly because, I mean, it was just a hypothesis. And I really thought that people, if I mentioned it, people would just think that I am a bitchy gossip. But I don't care anymore. So, and it's actually relevant, I think. So I'm going to tell you.
Okay, can I tell you this? I have so many stories about people, but telling them is really strange because people just think like you are a bitchy girl or you're a gossiper or whatever else. But this is why I've been telling people like sometimes it's worth being the bad guy because it might actually help people. And so I don't blame Rebecca and everyone else who like, we know. That's why people say like, oh, if you knew, why didn't you say something? If we come out and say something, we get harassed, we get threats, and we don't have the money these men are making. I don't know how to explain to you that the women in this particular space, sciences and philosophy, are not making money, but the men are making so much money. I cannot explain to you how much money these men are making. So they live in security buildings. They live in nice places. Like they don't have the same fears and the audience is generally on their side. So they're not dealing with the same amount of backlash. And like this is the threat of misogyny. Misogyny is a physical threat to women's lives. It's not just mean words men say on the internet. It is a literal threat to our lives.
At that panel in Dublin, I specifically talked about my experience with rape and death threats in response to women on a previous panel who all agreed that that sort of thing simply does not happen in the secular atheist world. I wanted to offer my own perspective that actually, yes, it does. And the woman who was most insistent that it doesn't was prominent secular writer Paula Kirby. And I addressed her directly by saying that I really admired her writing and I was surprised by her ignorant take on misogyny in our movement. At the time, I did know that Kirby was involved with Dawkins Foundation, particularly the UK operations, I think. What my friend related to me months later is that Richard Dawkins was, in fact, fucking Paula Kirby.
Oh.
Now, when he told me...
Hold on, I gotta hear that again.
...is that Richard Dawkins was, in fact, fucking Paula Kirby.
They were intimately engaged in an adult relationship that consisted in a type of intimacy that could influence someone's opinion.
Now, when he told me that, I did immediately believe him because I had helped organize prior conferences and I'd heard from several other organizers that if you invite Dawkins to speak at your conference, you also have to invite whatever woman he happens to be fucking at the time.
Okay, I will tell you, I was at a conference with a bunch of men and this man was talking to me and guys, I was high off my ass. I just need you to know that I had hit a weed pen and I was so fucking high and this guy was talking to me and I was thinking in my head like, you know, this is fun and everything, but like this conversation's kind of mid, but I was also like, okay, I'm kind of having fun, whatever. And I started to get a migraine. So I was like, hey bro, I need to go up to my hotel room. I have a migraine. And I did. I had a killer migraine. And so as I was leaving, he's like, oh, we should get together. And I was like, yeah, sure. Then this guy invites me out to lunch. He's in my area. And I go, yeah, sure, we'll go out to lunch. I get there. We're talking. And he goes, I'm having a really great time on this date. And I was like, are we on a date? He was like, yeah. And I was like, fuck, I should have known I was autistic right there. I was like, are we on a date? He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh. I legit just thought we were hanging out. And he was like, oh, you didn't know? I was like, don't you have like 8 girlfriends? He's like, yeah, but I'm looking for a 9. Looking for a 9. This guy literally was poly with 8 girlfriends. I was like, look, I'm not trying to be nobody's 9th. I did not know. I did not. I swear to God, I did not fucking know. I was so confused. I was like, oh, fuck. I'm so sorry, bro. I did not know that. Anyways.
Usually, but not always, a blonde, 20 to 40 years his junior. So I had already assumed he had some kind of arrangement with his famous wife of more than a decade, Doctor Who's Lala Ward. But it hadn't occurred to me that
Hold on. I gotta hear that again.
you also have to invite whatever woman he happens to be fucking at the time. Usually,
Okay, I don't like Rebecca Watson's use of fucking these women. It is a misogynistic way to express these women's relationship with these men in their lives. So I just want to say, like, I don't appreciate that sentiment because that is exactly reinforcing this belief that the women are only around these men because they're getting fucked by them. So I just don't particularly enjoy that way of telling the story, but okay.
but not always, a blonde, 20 to 40 years his junior. So I had already
Great. So now they're also young and probably naive and being taken advantage of by these very powerful men with these positions of power they're using to sort of wave their dick around as if to say, you're so lucky to be with me. So yeah, now these women I'm definitely more empathetic to.
assumed he had some kind of arrangement with his famous wife of more than a decade, Doctor Who's Lala Ward. But it hadn't occurred to me that he might be so furious with me because I happen to disagree with a woman he was fucking. And fucking her, he surely was. Months later, someone sent me emails that were revealed in a court case. You see, in 2010, the Richard Dawkins Foundation sued
Dawkins sues his disciple?
Josh Timonen, who ran their website, claiming that he was fraudulently pocketing funds. As part of that case, this email appeared in the public record from Robin Elizabeth Cornwell, the blonde evolutionary psychologist, 20 to 40 years Dawkins Jr., who was at the time the executive director of the Richard Dawkins Foundation. Hi, Josh. I've managed to get a bit of sleep, and while I do need to rush off, I do want to discuss some possibilities. First, I am behind the idea of simply closing the entire forum down, archives and all, after the 30 days. Richard will also back you on this. He really did misunderstand, and his absolute goal was to protect you. One of the things I know extremely well about Richard
Okay, men protecting who?
is he is conflict avoiding and he female dependent. There is a lot of psychology at work here, but Richard is extremely weak when it comes to demanding females. While Richard and I are not together any longer, we do have a friendship. It has been under a great deal of strain. When Paula, who has been his mistress now for over 2 years, found out about me, she demanded that he end his friendship with me. It has been a struggle, and I will be very honest here, extremely painful on an emotional level. The irony is that I would never have become executive director of RDF if Richard and I were still in a sexual relationship. I have done my best not to use our relationship to move the foundation in the right direction. And in fact, when Karen was trustee, she did all she could to keep me out of the loop on all financial decisions. She succeeded. Paula will remain an influence on Richard, and for whatever reasons, but she does not have to be the one that Andrew goes to for advice. Unfortunately, Richard had constantly assured me that she was not involved in the foundation decision-making processes, but apparently this is not the case. The fact that RD excluded me from the discussions and directly misled me is a matter that I need to clear up with him. What I don't want is for you to feel in the middle, nor do I want you to have to take sides. There is no reason to take sides. I am not giving RD any ultimatums. That is not my style, and given that RD is very conflict avoidant, he is not going to be comfortable with having to go back to Paula and tell her that he is not taking her advice. So I'm in a bit of an awkward position because while I will throw myself in front of a train for you and Andrew, I also would do the same for Richard. And then she talks about what to do about their internet forum.
I did not know there was all these layers, to be honest. This is all kind of new to me. Whoa.
Extremely weak when it comes to demanding women, huh? Interesting. By the way, Lala did eventually leave Dawkins, as noted in this exchange between Deepak Chopra and Jeffrey.
No, Deepak? No way. This is okay. We covered Deepak Chopra yesterday. She was with him in Mexico debate. They held hands in public, always a bad sign. I said hello. She did not smile back or respond. Dawkins reluctantly and grumpily agreed to a photo with me after the conveners requested a photo for the press. He did not attend the press conference which followed, so I did it solo. I told him his blood pressure was rising and to be careful. In hindsight, the stroke was inevitable. Jesus. Also in hindsight, I feel bad for the whole affair. This is how I really live. A Facebook post, Deepak Chopra videos. Okay, Olero. Did he send his own video to Jeffrey? Did he send his own inspirational video to Jeffrey? Stop it. Okay, let's see. Daily Mail. Okay, it looks like unlock genes. Okay, super genes. Unlock the astonishing power of your DNA. Optimum health and well-being. It's a book by Deepak Chopra. And then, okay, okay.
Epstein. Subject line, karma. Remembering all of this, I decided to see if Cornwell is in the latest Epstein drop. And guess what? She is. It turns out that Cornwell claims that she was in attendance when one of Lawrence Krauss's many accusers said Krauss rubbed up and down her leg at an event. Krauss reached out to Cornwell during the BuzzFeed investigation in the hope that she could testify that in fact it was the woman who was being a creep, and Krauss turned her down, and she's probably just angry about it, and that's why she's claiming he
Hold on. Let's look. Here's the allegation from BuzzFeed, which I remember today seemed to fit a false blog story, which you had related to me and warned me based on our experience at the conference in Iowa where you were an executive director at the Dawkins Foundation. I would greatly appreciate it if you could write to me about your eyewitness experience at the event. Thanks. Let's see, okay. You met a student from another university, an atheist activist in March 2008 at the American Atheist Convention in Minneapolis. Oh my God. She wanted to expand the atheist group she ran in the Midwestern university she was attending, and I hope to convince you to come and speak. You usually seemed enthusiastic. During attendees, including you, Richard Dawkins, went for dinner and the student and volunteers for Dawkins Foundation. Afterwards, the students invited you to join volunteers for a drink. Always a good decision. That's sarcasm. Your intentions or so brought a male friend. Your intentions? You asked her to come. Oh, hold on. You asked her to come get you in your hotel room. These emails are there's like a I think they were converted or something, so there's like misspelling, so I'm trying to figure out what the words mean. This C was very wary of your intentions. She and so brought a male friend with her. Opening the door to find them both there, you informed her you decided not to go. You met the student again at the American Atheist Convention in Iowa. You pulled over a chair for her at the bar and then started running your hand up and down her leg under the table. She tried to shift her body weight away from you and you persisted in putting your hand on her leg. She crossed her legs and you kept trying. Then she turned her entire body away. Okay.
At an event, Krause reached out to Cornwell during the BuzzFeed investigation in the hope that she could testify that in fact it was the woman who was being a creep, and Krause turned her down, and she's probably just angry about it, and that's why she...
It says, you are correct. I remember the incident at the bar with the student organizer very well. I was the one responsible for persuading you to come to Iowa for the conference, but had promised I would buy you a scotch if you agreed to be part of the program. We met at the bar at the hotel, and Michael and Susie from RDF joined us at first. Slowly, other people drifted in and joined us. One of them was the head of the Secular Student Alliance, and then a couple of students associated with that organization joined our table. I think they were delegated to get the delighted. I think they were delighted to get the opportunity to meet you. The women you mentioned, she sat across from you and was very chatty with you, very friendly. She was trying to convince you to come up to go to the hot tub, and you replied that you did not pack any swim trunks, and she replied that you didn't need any. A towel would be just fine. I had a sense that you were a little uncomfortable and both trying to be nice, but also was trying to change the topic. At one point, you leaned over and asked me, is she hitting on me? ? I replied that indeed she was from my perspective. Then a few minutes later, you said she was rubbing her legs against yours. By then, you were obviously not comfortable, and she continued to invite you to the hot tub. You continued to decline, and it was by that time becoming annoying. She finally realized you were not about to go with her, so she left. The other students had left as well by then. After she left, you said again how she was rubbing up against you with her feet, and you jokingly, or maybe half jokingly, said to me something along the lines of keeping you safe from her during the conference.
He's claiming he touched her inappropriately. Krause then forwarded her testimony to the BuzzFeed reporters, who sadly were unable to verify her.
They were not able to verify. I had a long chat with Robin yesterday. The one thing she wasn't able to provide was more information about the blog post, which we were not aware of. Obviously, if you can locate the post that was not disclosed to us previously, that's important. If we can locate a post, did Robin happen to send you a link or provide any more details about that? It would help us find it. And can you remember when Robin told you about this? I guess the ideal situation would be if Robin had emailed you at the time, sent a link to the post outlining her concerns about veracity. Are you able to look through your archives and see what you have? Lawrence Krause wrote, please confirm receipt. Thanks, LMK. Lawrence Krause wrote, FYI, today as my head cleared and I could relax a bit, I reviewed your original email to me, and it hit me that the item 4 might relate to an episode that Robin Cornwell had alerted me to some years ago. At the time, Robin was an exec director of the Richard Dawkins Foundation. Didn't I read this already? Or is this different? No, okay, hold on. At the time, I lost my sentence. At the time, she was Richard, and was with me some of the other... Oh my God, hold on, I can't read the sentence structure. At the foundation, when a young woman from the conference I was speaking at, which I knew was from the Midwest, but I've forgotten was in Iowa, asked to join our table at the bar. She, the young woman, invited me to go to the hot tub, and I declined. Robin then came with me sometime later, very upset, to say that this individual had written a blog accusing me of harassing, distorting the episode, letting me know she was an eyewitness if I never ever needed one. I never looked at the student's blog and forgot about it. I remembered Robin's call then today as I thought about your email, and I contacted Robin earlier this evening. Here is my email to her attaching your original description and her response, which she has given me permission to send you. Okay, interesting.
Count. And then obviously Krauss forwarded the entire exchange to his best friend, Jeffrey Epstein, famous pedophile, who.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know, a lot of these events are very similar. It's, do you understand why some people have very strict rules about like drinking with coworkers or socializing after main events or even being alone in rooms with people? Like, I kind of get it. It's just the irony is, you know, you want to have fun with people, you want to build community, but also the community has to have the same informed value consent. Otherwise, it's just going to be messy. And I know I've been to a few conferences myself with more liberally and liberally people, you know, and liberal who lean more right. And what I've noticed from all of those events is it really is just like a bunch of people who definitely were not popular in high school, but are popular on the internet. And when you realize that, you're just like, oh, like nobody's really serious. Everyone's just trying to have fun in a weird way. Like have fun and be big kids and have money and have status. But it really does come at the expense of so many people. It really does.
Who, by the way, is clearly getting fed up with Krauss's shit by this point. Finding that exchange made me wonder if there was any more funny Krauss stuff in the latest drop, and boy, is there. First of all, we could figure it out from that.
So how weird is this, right? So Lawrence Krauss has his own allegations. Then Dawkins, okay, on behalf of Lawrence, is trying to help Lawrence face these allegations. And how do they all do that? By utilizing Jeffrey Epstein. And that should tell you everything you need to know.
First drop of emails, but this one really makes it clear how Jeffrey Epstein could not stand Lawrence Krauss. For instance, in 2010, Epstein gave...
Maybe he couldn't stand him the same way he couldn't stand Elon. See, that's the other thing about these jokes. But seriously, Elon was in some parts of the Epstein bubble, but he couldn't get to the cool people parts in quotation marks. Did you hear that woman do an interview and she was there in the Epstein files and she said, if you're in the Epstein files, it just means you were cool because only cool people are in the Epstein files. And I was like, girl. And she's trying to say like, who's who? Like Jeffrey Epstein is a guy who knows everybody. So if you're there, it just proves you're famous. And that's why I say, I do not envy the famous. May I never be in these files because I don't want to hang out with any of you losers. And that's the thing at the end of the day is like, not interested, girl. That's what I'm saying. It's all high school. They all just want to be popular. That's what they want to do. Hold on. Let me see if I can find it really fast. Because it's ridiculous. If you're in the Epstein files, you're cool. I love that. I just posted that.
He knew everybody that was very powerful. So like if you were on the scene and you were powerful, like to be honest, like if you're not in those files, it would be an insult because it just means that you were a bit of a loser.
Right. So the people who aren't in the files are losers.
Yes.
Oops.
Okay. Are you in the files?
Well, of course I am, because it's any journalist that wrote about it.
Okay. Well, there you go. Thank you. She's on the Prince Andrew kind of bubble. Those people.
Krauss money to invite a bunch of intellectuals like Steven Pinker and Richard Dawkins to a conference. But a lot of the invitees said no. And so Krauss started inviting fillers. And then he started CCing Epstein on plans to go scuba diving.
From Jeffrey Epstein to Lawrence. Let's talk today. My concerns are Mr. Concerns are as follows. You asked for funding for a meeting with Dawkins, Venter, and Pinker. I raised early concerns with you now involving the development. These people cannot spell. People from the university conceded as it was important to you, then concerns over no real agenda, then it concerns over the fact that questions regarding scuba and restaurants were being asked rather than agenda. Then as people started to drop out, are these people literally just like, is Epstein their sugar daddy? Fillers were added to already heavy list of fillers, added to development people, then last minute. Do you want a weekend and Caribbean guests? I have emailed and called over 3 weeks to discuss. Only yesterday did happen. The foundation as an important part of a larger society, a science strategy. I realize you are very busy with your personal life and will support and have tried to support you as a friend. Nothing presumptuous will happen without our speaking. Do these people fucking not know how to type? Or is it just because they're also busy on is it a voice message? Why is this grammar so bad?
At which point, Epstein finally snapped and told him to stop fucking around. Then in 2013, Krause forwards Epstein a fan letter he got saying that Krause, Dawkins, and others inspired this kid, and Epstein replies, "Great, it's you, Dawkins, and others. Is this the best use of your brain and time?"
Woo, girl! Hi, Lawrence. Forgive me if this is an inappropriate medium. This is from Owen Finch. To contact you, I was looking for an email. It was directed to ASU homepage. I just wanted to send a quick message saying thank you for inspiring me to pursue my career in science. Oh my God. Where are all these fanboys now? You know what I mean? Where are all these fanboys now? Okay. Let's see. Theoretical physics. I'm 16 and a junior in high school, and your research is answering the questions I've always had about the universe and the outer reaches of space. I just want to thank you for being an advocate for the war on religion, if you will. I myself, as an atheist, and where I live it's a very unpopular opinion or view to have. However, it's people like you and Dawkins and others that let me know we're not alone in this view, and like-minded, much more educated people out there, blah, 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 blah. And then Epstein's like, okay. And he's like, look, Epstein, people think I'm cool. And that's what's happening. These men are just like, look, this 16-year-old boy thinks I'm cool. And Epstein's like, okay, great. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, it just feels so pathetic. It's like the most pathetic thing I've ever seen in my life. It really is a certain bubble of pathetic boys who think they're all so fucking smart, and the only people they can end up being with are teenagers or young people or young girls. That's what I'm saying. It's so pathetic. It's so pathetic.
Inspired this kid, and Epstein replies, "Great, it's you, Dawkins, and others. Is this the best use of your brain and time?" Which clearly cuts Krause to the quick. Maybe not.
Bad day today. Don't have the spirit or energy to spar. It is not a choice. By the way, it was his popular book in the field of physics that was one of my inspirations. To Jeffrey Epstein from Lawrence. You asked me for emails. I gave them a few to you. I cannot help whenever I lecture, people want to hear it and learn from it. I cannot help that I can explain things well. Okay. I cannot help that I get a kick out of coming up with new ways to understand things that are explicable. And then August 20th, 2013, Epstein wrote, Einstein did it by his ideas. His lectures sucked and inspired no one. His work spoke for itself. Arthur C. Clarke was a performer. You choose. Yo, they're so is this not the most, please let me be shocked. Like, give me the shocked at how pathetic it is. Like, listen to me when I say this. If this isn't enough no man is going to sit through Rebecca Watson's video. That's a problem. But if these atheist bubbles do not turn their asses around with who their leaders are right the fuck now, you know what I'm saying? If we do not start seeing the pattern of, quote, intelligent men who tend to have the certain pattern and understand and see it for what it is, oh my God. Okay, Epstein, oh no. So Lauren said, maybe not, but it is one use. It is also easy for me. And also it seems like that exciting, good young people to do, It also seems that exciting, good young people to do science is one of the things professors can and should do. And I just do it globally instead of in a classroom. Epstein says, great, it's you, Dawkins, and others. This is the best use of your brain and time. Oh, damn.
But it is one use. It is also easy for me. And also, it seems that exciting, good young people to do science is one of the things professors can and should do. I just do it globally
okay, she's reading
instead of in a classroom. Epstein then dunks on him again, calling him a performer, at which point Krause waves a little white flag and begs him to stop. Understanding how much Epstein loathes Krause is essential to truly appreciating this next email from 2017, which reveals that at some point, Krause assumed that Epstein was going to help him make a vampire movie called Vampire Noir.
What? To Jeffrey Krause, Vampire Noir. No way. Cash flow estimate here. He was their sugar daddy. You know what I bet Epstein is? I bet sometimes Epstein is that guy who bought love and he only had friends because he was giving them a good time. But if he felt like someone was taking advantage of him, he got resentful. That's what it sounds like. All these people are disgusting. I hate all these people, philosophically.
My favorite Krause email thread, though, is this one where he is trying to retain a lawyer to help defend him in his university's investigation into the BuzzFeed allegations. And while he's chatting with the lawyer, at the same time in other email threads, Epstein is telling Krause to just drop it and not hire a lawyer. And finally, Krause gets all confuzzled about
Oh my God. Wait, secondary theory. What if, hear me out. What if, okay, this is going to sound generous, but stay with me here. It's not. What if Lawrence Krauss believes what he's saying and thinks Epstein is going to help him fight for justice? Because you know these men are all neurodivergent. What if they autistically want a sense of justice? Because I always say the sense of justice doesn't mean you're right. So what if he has a crazy sense of justice and then Epstein's like, what are you doing? And then he's just like, they were mean to me and I was white and they're wrong and I want to do something about it. And then Epstein's like, drop it. And he's like, no, I want justice. You know what I mean? Like, I'm serious. Like, and then Krauss, because these men are entitled and feel like it's their right to harass people and be misogynistic, always think they're right anyways. So he thinks he's right. So he's going to double down. Okay, like Elon or any of them out. You know what I'm saying? I think this is what's happening. Because he sounds so genuine here where he's like, why are you being mean to me, bro? I thought you were my boy. You don't have my back, bro? These women, these bitches are slandering me. And then Epstein's like, leave it alone, drop it. And he's like, oh, you know?
Who to listen to. So he actually emails the lawyer he hasn't even hired yet and says, hi, Justin, I have a slightly unusual request. I have been advised through much of the BuzzFeed experience, both before and after, by a friend who is also somewhat infamous.
He name drops Jeffrey Epstein.
His name is Jeffrey Epstein, and you may know who he is already. Bottom line is that Jeffrey is not only friends with most of the famous people from finance to business to Hollywood.
This is autism. This is autism. Okay? This is autism. This is some neurodivergency. This man literally is like, oh, my friend's with Epstein. He's actually going to come help me. And I say this as an autistic woman, of course, as you guys know. Because I genuinely feel authentic, genuine stupidity from this man that he actually believes that him name dropping Jeffrey Epstein is actually going to help him. Oh my God. This is crazy. Chet says, small correction. Dawkins wasn't the man in the elevator with Rebecca. He dogpiled on her with the rest of the atheist sphere when she complained about it after. Yeah, but did she ever confirm? I did hear a rumor it was him, but we have no confirmation about that. I've always wondered because it would make so much more sense if it was him. But if it's not, it's not, right? I don't want to spread misinformation, of course, or I don't want to say something wrong, of course. Okay, this is crazy.
Who have either been brought down during Me Too, and he also speaks
Oh my God. When men talk badly about Me Too, red flag.
from finance to business to Hollywood, who have either been
Look, the only people I want to hear criticize Me Too are the black women that Me Too was kidnapped from, because the black women started Me Too and white women co-opted it as they do. And the only criticism I want to hear about Me Too is from black women. Otherwise, I do not want to hear any criticism about Me Too from men. Okay? But that's really fucked up that a black woman started Me Too and she got zero credit for it. Okay? Just a reminder.
brought down during Me Too. And he also speaks regularly with people ranging from the awful White House people who he is friends with to Ken Starr, etc. He is concerned about exactly how we play this, as he thinks because of the variety and number of different things being discussed in the media and online, that this will be considered beyond Title IX. I should say that all indications I have thus far do not suggest this. But anyway, Jeffrey would like to speak with you as he has concerns about my having counsel who directly represent me.
No, chat says, are you literally convinced this is autism or is it sarcasm? No, I'm autistic people, neurodivergent people are infamously bad at playing games. Okay? They think they're good at it, but you're not. You're all so fucking bad at it. Elon Musk, all these men, they think they're in the know. They think they really get the social cues and the social script, and they don't. That's why people are like, you're weird. It's ableism, right? It's these men, Jeffrey Epstein is like, they don't actually, you remember this is high school with money, right? And I'm saying, I think this man, I think Elon, I think these men don't understand why they're not invited to the islands. They don't understand the social cues. They're misunderstanding the social expectation. They are misreading the room. They're still bad men. But I'm saying even bad people in a social group can misread each other. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying this isn't about good or bad in us. This is about them. And this is why this man is willing to name drop to a lawyer, Jeffrey Epstein. And Jeffrey's like, you know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. So this is why, because you know how people said like, oh, like Elon genuinely seemed to like he did not understand why he wasn't invited. And it's like, well, you know what? And this is high school with money, right? So this is just the game of hierarchy, the game of are you cool enough to come to our rape parties, which is disgusting, of course. But it exists, whether we like it or not. In these bubbles, like any other bubble, there's always going to be a hierarchy. You're either in the in or you're not. You're either in the inner circle or you're not. You're either in the cool people group or you're not. And I think based off of this email, I can see why Epstein eventually got really fed up with Lawrence Krauss, because he's like, bro, read the room. Lawrence Krauss is literally making Jeffrey Epstein's job harder. He is literally, but I don't think he knows. I don't think he gets it. Not that I'm giving him advice to get it, but you know what I mean? I'm just an observer here.
In interactions with the university at this time versus having someone to act as an advisor and draft letters that I can send. I will pay for your time to do that.
Because remember, autism doesn't mean you're a good person, guys. Autism doesn't make you innocent. Autism does not exempt you from being a bad person. Some of the worst people on this planet are autistic. Okay? Autism doesn't make you a good person. So when I say autistic, I just mean like through the lens and filter of autism, you will socialize differently, but it doesn't, you know, your values aren't reflected in your diagnosis.
Necessary. Would you be willing to do this in the next day or so? Holy shit, Lawrence Krauss is so fucking stupid.
That's what I'm saying. He's so
being
stupid.
investigated for sexual assault, and he told a lawyer that he hasn't even hired yet that he's not sure whether he should listen to the lawyer or his friend, famous pedophile rapist Jeffrey Epstein.
That's what I'm saying. What?
So he wants them to speak to each other and work it out for him. The lawyer actually agrees to talk to famous pedophile rapist Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Lawrence Krauss. And eventually the lawyer is like, look, this is getting
Wait, hold on.
extremely
So, the lawyer said, you're getting terrible advice from smart people who have never done this work and have no idea what they're talking about. I understand where they're coming from, but this is just bad advice, full stop. I could give you dozens of examples where the only reason my clients got off and we get off a lot was because we fought hard to make this process fair. Moreover, no one will take seriously the constitutional law arguments of a physicist, no matter how famous he is. You need a lawyer to make those. I don't mean to be rude, but I have to be somewhat jealous with my time so I can focus on my cases in which people have decided to hire me. We spent a lot of time on the phone yesterday, which I was very happy to do. And I'm willing to do a short call with Jeffrey, boo, but I can't keep emailing about this. I have a limited amount of time and I have to make sure I'm spending as much as possible with my current clients. I assure you that if you hire me and someone else wants to keep talking about their case, I assure you that if you hire me and someone else wants to keep talking about their case while they're deciding, I will tell them the same thing. That they have enough information to make a decision and just need to decide. Tell Jeffrey he may have to play phone tag since my weekend schedule is a little up in the air. So he will need to leave me a number. I think 11 a.m. Eastern should work as a start if that works for him. Justin.
Annoying and you're wasting a lot of my time. At which point Krauss finally agrees to retain him. I assume the lawyer welcomed this relationship because imagine all of the great stories you're going to get out of somebody that stupid. Oh, and also all of the money you'll get out of somebody.
Discord said they don't get it because they're financially successful, so they think their social handicap doesn't exist anymore. Actually, that's what RFK Jr. and this administration thinks as well, because this is what autistic people have been talking about. Whether you're level 1 or level 3, you're gonna have deficits. Like some people think it's more fluid, like some days you're more level 3, meaning high needs, or depending on how you view the levels too, there's also that part of it. But like some days, let's just use high needs, low needs. Some days you're more high needs, some days you're more low needs. And so because these men are successful, because they have money, there's that idea of like, well, I must not have a deficit because look how but then, looking at them, there is a social deficit, reading the room deficit. I have social deficits. I see it in the way that I am. And I also know how my brain works, especially now that I know I'm diagnosed. So like I have this understanding of the deficit when it appears. And I also know that whether I like it or not, the problem with the world is they see it before I even open my mouth. Like I said, in Croatia, I really do notice the way people look at me. And I'm like, fuck, like I need to learn how to mask better or something. But it's also the way I look. It's the way I do my hair. It's the way that I just exist standing still. And people can tell in the same way that, honestly, I can tell. I can look out the window and be like, autistic. Oh, autism. Oh, like I see people all the time on the street and I'm like, and it's a pattern, whether they know it or not. Now, here's the difference. I see a pattern and I think that person's autistic. They see a pattern in me and they think, oh, that girl's weird. They don't think, oh, she's autistic. They think, oh, she's weird. What do I do with her? Ooh. Uh-oh. And I think, oh, you might be autistic. And that means like, I'm just like, oh, cool. Great. And that's why autistic people can feel very confused when engaging with a lot of people. Because it's like, why do I feel like you like me, but you're also weirded out by me? Or why do I feel like I'm your weird friend? What's happening here? There's so many layers to this. Now, of course, especially in my community where I always felt like I was very much like wanted and people always wanted to be with me. Yeah, but we're all like autistic kids hanging out. All of these conferences I've ever been to, all of these groups I've ever hung out with, we're all neurodivergent freaks. And then we're all playing. That's why I was like, I don't want to do this. I have happily been introverted and very hermit-like for the last few years, and my life has never been better. Every time I try to collab with YouTubers, every time I try to get physical and like go to conferences and engage, drama, sexual abuse, trauma, sexual abuse. I'm over it. Is there no safe space? And this is why women in these spaces are starting to get together because they're like, hey, obviously we can't do whatever this is you're doing. So I understand why a lot of women in this space are just getting together with each other because of all of this. It's too much, it's too much.
That's stupid. Also included in the Krauss-Epstein files was another name I wasn't expecting. Ron Lindsay, former executive director of Center for Inquiry, which, fun fact...
Look at this once again.
Wasn't
watch.
Expecting.
Reason for change. Atheism, humanism, reason, science, secularism, free speech, free thought, inquiry. That's when people are like, Brittany, are you a humanist? I'm like, Brittany, are you a, I don't know, insert fucking atheist adjacent term here. I barely want to say I'm an atheist. Okay? Because these words are associated with, and then the group and community that come together, they're not serious. Okay? You're not seriously, your inquiry into the universe is not serious. Because if it was serious, you would be open to new information. Richard Dawkins' view on trans people is the perfect example of this. He is unwilling to look at the updated information on trans individuals. And because of that, his transphobia is rampant. If he was truly a scientist, if he was truly interested in actually updating his information, he would do that. And he doesn't. Yeah, chat says they don't have genuine curiosity. They are not genuinely curious. How frustrating is that? Because this is my autism, am so genuinely curious that every time I think, are you curious the way I am? And they go, oh, no. I'm like, oh. Then what are we doing here? Why am I spending my time and my money? Why am I reading thousands of books? Why the fuck am I coming to your conferences if you're not goddamn serious about figuring some shit out? And they have the audacity to all make fucking so much money off convincing young boys on the internet and some girls, okay, that they're the smartest guys in the room. How are you the smartest guys in the room when you're busy emailing Jeffrey Epstein? The fuck? Can't be that smart.
Lindsay, former executive director of Center for Inquiry, which, fun fact, merged with the Richard Dawkins Foundation some time ago, at which point RDF's executive director at the time took over. That was Robin Blumner, a brunette woman 20 to 40 years Richard Dawkins Jr., who had assumed that role from Edwina Rogers, a blonde woman 20 to 40 years Richard Dawkins Jr. But Ron Lindsay was the head of CFI in 2011 when Lawrence Krauss publicly defended Jeffrey Epstein. That was also the year that Lawrence Krauss was a featured speaker on a cruise for CFI, when he propositioned a CFI guest and asked her to join him in a threesome with his partner. When this latter information came to the attention of CFI employees in 2014, thanks to the woman's friend reporting it when the woman herself was too embarrassed, they begged Lindsay to stop inviting Krauss to events, particularly events when unsuspecting women might be stuck on a boat with Lawrence Krauss. In full disclosure, one of those employees was my boyfriend at the time. He loved working for CFI. That was his dream job. And he believed in their mission of building a more secular, rational world. But he was horrified when Lindsay not only refused to do anything about Krauss, but actually invited Krauss back for another cruise and made him an honorary board member. The final straw came in 2013. Women at CFI had worked really hard to put on their second annual Women in Secularism conference. And Ron Lindsay insisted that as president of CFI, he should be able to deliver the introduction. He did so, and he used his time on stage to spotlight criticism of feminists for silencing male voices.
No, I love this. Stop. Hold on. Okay, let's see. Okay, this approach doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work for me. If it's the approach that dogmatists who want to silence critics have always taken because it beats having to engage someone in reasoned argument. They always say this. It's the approach that have been taken by many religions. It's the approach taken by ideologies such as Marxism. You pull your dogma off the shelf, take out the relevant category or classification, fit it snugly over the person you want to categorize, dismiss, and silence, and poof, you're done. End of discussion. You're a heretic spreading the lies of Satan, and anything you say is wrong. Oh, you're a member of the bourgeoisie, defending your ownership of the means of production, and everything you say is just a lie to justify your power. You're a man. You have nothing to contribute to the discussion of how to achieve equality for women. Wow, great speech, bro. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the concept of privilege is useful. In fact, it is too useful to have it ossified and turned into dogma. By the way, with respect to shut up and listen meme, I hope it's clear that it's the shut up part that troubles me, not the listen part. Listening is good. People do have different life experiences, and many women have had experiences and perspectives from which men can and should learn. But having certain experiences does not automatically turn one into an authority to whom others must defer. Listen carefully, but where appropriate, question and engage. Okay, listen. This very common, right? First of all, anytime a man says Marxism, I just tune it out. You know what I mean? Because they're the post-woke modernism. Listen, these Marxists, these Machiavellian mothers, these dragons. Okay, I asked Dawkins one time to play with my dragon, and all of a sudden I'm crazy. But who's really crazy now, Richard? You, me, or Jeffrey Epstein? Who's gonna know? Ethan, listen. This is so typical. This is exactly the pattern. And you know what's crazy? This is again, do we have free will if we all sound the same? This is what I'm saying. How much free will can you have if you don't even have an actual original opinion on the situation? You know what I mean? This could have been written by 100 of the same men in the same space. Bro.
Those men have privilege.
Crazy.
In his speech, Ron Lindsay bemoaned the situation where the concept of privilege is used to try to silence others as a justification for saying, shut up and listen. Shut up because you're a man and you cannot possibly know what it's like to experience X, Y, and Z. And anything you say is bound to be mistaken in some way. But of course, you're too blinded by your privilege even to realize that. This approach doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work for me, said the man addressing an audience of women at the Women in Secularism.
Hold on. The bottom of it says, and this is where we see fundamental connection between advocacy for women's rights and humanism. Humanists are committed to autonomy of the individual, the right to the individual to make decisions for herself, to decide which occupations, which relationships to pursue or forego. Women will not be able to secure the autonomy until they achieve complete social and civil equality and equal economic and political opportunity. And that is why CFI is committed to working towards those objectives. How can you work towards those objectives? Well, shitting on progressive values. Because that's what this letter is. How do you shit on progressive values? Someone said this the other day. Hold on. Oh, God, what was it? Somebody said this the other day, like, I'm progressive. Oh, they said when your mom feels progressive. It was a TikTok. He said when your mom feels progressive, but then ends up not being that. And she was like, it was a me or a skit where the mom is like, immigrants work so hard. They make this country. They belong here. Also, you notice how they're not fat and they're in shape. We need more of those people here. And it's like, yeah, progressive value, intersectional feminism doesn't also include fat phobia. So that's the irony, is like when your mom and dad are almost like they're liberal, but then they swing around with the fat phobia and you're like, damn it. You know, that's the stuff we need to deconstruct though. That's why we say these people are liberal right or liberal left, because you can be liberal left and liberal right. These men in the atheist bubble are always liberal right. They say they want to support gay rights. They say they even maybe might be pro-trans rights, but ultimately all of their rhetoric it reinforces conservative value.
Conference that was entirely organized by women for women. It's enforced silence, he said, dogma spread by the likes of the religious and, of course, the Marxists. This was, of course, incredible to watch live. I tweeted at the time about how ridiculous it was, and Lindsay immediately went on the attack, confirming that I am, in fact, one of the mean feminists. The next day...
No, wait, Reed. By the way, can you just see the engagement here? There's no engagement. That's what I'm saying. Respectfully, 3 likes on a tweet. Can we please just, you know what I mean? Like, there is something to be said about our desire to even tweet in the first place. My life improved so significantly when I got off X. I will stand by this. This was in 2013, though, to be fair. This is 2013. Rebecca says, very strange to open with a white male CEO lecturing women about using the concept of privilege to silence men. And then she tweeted at him, "Am I silencing you right now?" He replied, "Never claimed I've been silenced. Your very first tweet indicated as a white male. I shouldn't have spoken. I should have shut up." I mean, it was a little awkward to have you there at a women's conference. That's what I'm saying. How do we not see how tone deaf this is? To have a women's conference, the second of its kind, and to have a man open it up. What are we doing here?
Immediately went on the attack, confirming that I am, in fact, one of the mean feminists. The next day, I wrote a blog post explaining why it was a pretty tone-deaf way to start a women's conference, which infuriated Lindsay. That evening, there was a
Tone deaf. Listen, look how nice our language is. Look how both Rebecca and I were like, it's like tone deaf. That's like the nicest way to say it. And they were like, they get offended at the same people who call you a snowflake or say you're sensitive about language are the same people that throw a literal fit over, "Hey, I think you're being a little tone deaf."
Dinner that speakers were expected to join, but Lindsay wasn't there. He was up in his hotel room composing a blog post responding to me by saying I inhabit an alternate
Rebecca Watson inhabits an alternate universe. Alternate universe. At least that is the most charitable explanation I can provide for her recent smear. Watson has posted comments on my opening talk at Women in Secularism 2, and maybe the most intellectually dishonest piece of writing since the last communique issued by North Korea. I feel like I am taking crazy pills. This is so embarrassing. Oh my God. This is so embarrassing. Her distortions begin with her second paragraph when she states that Lindsay spends a good deal of time arguing against the idea that feminism as a movement has no significant internal disagreements. I expanded about 200 words out of the 2420 word text, 2,420 word text, posing the question about whether there are significant divisions within feminism. In other words, I spent 90% of the time talking about other topics. The next time Watson asks me for a good deal of my drink, I will leave her an ice cube. What?
Universe, and saying my recent smear may be the most intellectually dishonest piece of writing since the last communique issued by North Korea. He insists that he is on the side of reason and evidence, and I am just doing identity politics. That attack, which was immediately bolstered and echoed by the men who were already harassing
Becky lives in an alternate universe, so I am told.
Me was
elevator gate.
What finally pushed my boyfriend at the time to quit his dream job at CFI. He held out because the board of directors said that they would investigate the matter, and a month later they met and announced that they would do nothing. The host of the podcast he produced for them, Chris Mooney and Indre Viscontis, also
Mother Jones. Point of Inquiry team resigns, launched new show with Mother Jones.
Left, and happily their show was quickly picked up by Mother Jones. So how did Ron Lindsay end up in the Epstein files? I'm sure you've already guessed, but yes, it's because of Lawrence Krauss. The BuzzFeed reporters reached out to Lindsay to confirm or deny the story told to them by several employees, that the employees went to Lindsay with the details of Krauss sexually harassing a woman on the cruise and asked that Lindsay stop platforming Krauss, which he refused to do, leading to at least one employee's resignation. The reporter also asked him to confirm that another employee told him that Krauss had cornered her in his hotel room.
Look, I'm going to say this very respectfully. And look, I am all about sexual liberation. I'm all about adults consenting. But I will say there is a reason why, if it is not truly like a deeply, deeply progressive space, and even if it is, I'm not saying, okay, it will eventually, all of these meetings, all of these gatherings, as much as they say they're there to have like serious conversations, respectfully, a lot of men go to fuck. We know this. We do know this because, as an example, we know Stephen Bonnell, Destiny, who regrettably I have collabed with in the past. Okay. We know when he was canvassing for politicians, quote, helping the Democrats, he had to go through a misogyny arc with his team because so many harassment complaints were showing up because the men came to basically help him canvass, but mostly showed up to fuck. And it became such an issue that he had to put out a message saying like, hey, stop being weird about girls and stop talking to the women and stop being weird. And that's the problem with these spaces. It's not that listen, I'm going to say this nicely. There is a reason why people who are genuinely interested in information, debate, politics, philosophy, also end up being incel and or autistic and or socially awkward and or often predatory because all predators exist in all bubbles, period, the end. That doesn't exempt it from spaces that are, quote, intellectual. Just because it's an intellectual space doesn't mean it's devoid of predatory behavior. Okay? If anything, these men will be like, actually, facts and logic say I can rape you. And that is honestly what I feel like we're watching here. Okay? So you have to be careful, because what I used to do when I was really young, especially I'm 36 now, but when I was really young, like 19 to 22, I genuinely believed when I was in the atheist community that because they were concerned with facts and they really wanted to do the science, that they would somehow be less misogynistic and less rapey. Oops. Whoops. The same way when you see a man be liberal or you see a man debate Fresh and Fit, you think, oh, he might be one of the good ones. Whoops. Whoops. Because you would think, oh, you've done the work. You must have deconstructed. Nope. So this standard of expectation from a man today, because men as a system are still in power, patriarchy, you have to make sure the individual man you are talking to has truly deconstructed from those frameworks in order to really trust what he is saying, and that it's an embodied belief that your gender doesn't make you less valuable than me, that your intellect isn't dictated on what you were assigned at birth, that, you know, I don't look at you differently because your identity is XYZ. Because it actually is very difficult to find a man, unless you're in very specific spaces, who genuinely has gone through that process, even in spaces where men claim to be liberal, or even using the word progressive, even though I would argue they're not progressive because they're not embodying the beliefs. But okay. All right.
And tried to molest her. Lindsay responded by telling the BuzzFeed reporter that he had
rewind.
The reporter also asked him to confirm that another employee told him that Krause had cornered her in his hotel room and tried to molest her. Lindsay responded by telling the BuzzFeed reporter that he had heard about the cruise incident from just one employee. He randomly mentions that Krause was in a very loving relationship at the time. I'm not sure what that has to do with the fact that
what
he
does that have to do with anything?
Invited another cruise attendee into a threesome with him. And he says he immediately got the victim's information and called her. The victim substantially confirmed what the employee said and said that she did not want to pursue the matter further. Then he talked to Krause, who denied the allegation. And so what more do you need? That's the end of things. He decided that that meant it was perfectly fine to invite the pedophile defender / threesome lover to cruise the Galapagos with CFI. And he's sure that that was the right decision because he received no complaints about his conduct, just like the 0 complaints he received from the previous cruise. Sure.
Crazy. Chad said I was the opposite. I was a little nerd in my little nerdy bubble, and all the nerdy boys in that bubble were so misogynistic. Well, that's the thing. They were all misogynistic. But you know what I said? I said, oh, when they make misogyny jokes, it's a self-aware joke. So they're not really misogynistic because the joke is the irony. They're being ironic. So now my standard is, you tell that joke too much, I'm just going to assume it's real now. It's like, listen, I am all about edgy jokes, but if you are only ever... okay, in every joke you make, and it's like now your personality. And this goes back to the conversation we had yesterday with that comedian, where you have way too many PDF jokes, my bro, and they are disgusting. At this point, that's why people think you're a PDF, because you are a little obsessed. Same thing with these other misogyny jokes, these racist jokes, all these jokes. Okay, you know, now we're just going to assume it's rooted in some truth. And that's what it is. So that's the thing I had to deconstruct, was one, my own internalized misogyny, because I definitely was suffering from it, right? Especially being a girl who was a boy in these spaces. Okay, I had to deconstruct that. And on top of that, like, you know, I said this to my partner this morning because we were talking about this because I was prepping for the show. And I was telling him, you know, the most frustrating thing about being a girl who makes money, a girl who's smart, a girl in philosophy, a girl who created her own philosophical framework. The hardest part about being a girl in a world where men are talking about like who's more disadvantaged, men or women, is that men are right. My life is better than theirs. I do have a better life than theirs as a woman because I'm literally just better than them. But that is not fair because I am sort of the exception and I still suffer under patriarchy. I could name you so many fucking ways I've still been disadvantaged under patriarchy that my male counterparts haven't, but their internalized belief that their life is miserable and will always be miserable, and their decision to be incels or to be jobless or to be absolutely lacking in contributing to society, that's true. Their life is worse than mine. But to be fair, it's because of their lack of willingness to introspect and deconstruct. Right? So it's self-inflicted, but it also is true. Both of these things can be true. Yeah, your life does suck, bro. And when you're ready, it can be better. But the truth is, it won't be. The irony of you thinking you're smarter than me. The irony of you thinking you're smarter than women. And that's why men are so mad that women are graduating college at higher rates or getting jobs or independent or don't need them. Because how can women be better than them if women are stupid? Wait, women stupid, how they better? If I better, how I not better? Like, if I'm, how this happen? You know what I mean? And so it doesn't work for them because they haven't deconstructed gender yet. They haven't deconstructed patriarchy. They think the only way to be a man is to make the money, but they don't even know how to do that. And even as these women are saying, like, I'll pay for your bills, bro. Like, I'll pay for our bills. You could just be a stay-at-home whatever. They're like, no. It's like they won't update their software. You know what I mean? They're literally like Windows 98, bro. They're on Windows 98. And I'm like, you got to update this, update. That's how you get left behind, girls. We don't want to leave you behind, by the way. It'd be so great if all of us were just updating. Oh my God, can you imagine a world where we were all keeping up? That'd be so great. But they're not going to do it. And so it is what it is.
And yes, he did acknowledge that the employee did tell him about the assault in the hotel room, but she didn't seem too scared of Krause and didn't volunteer to make an official report about it.
Oh, God.
So again, not a big deal.
Wait, listen to that.
And yes, he did acknowledge that the employee did tell him about the assault in the hotel room, but she didn't seem too scared of Krause and didn't volunteer to make an official report about it. So again, not a big deal.
Jesus
Then he
Christ.
clarifies for the BuzzFeed reporter that my boyfriend did not quit over all of this. No, it was just because Lindsay had a public spat with me, the girlfriend, which is a whole other story, tangential to your Krause piece. So I will not get into it here. But it's not tangential, is it? Because guess what happened after Lindsay wrote this reply defending Lawrence Krause? I mean, you already know, don't you? Lindsay forwarded his defense of Krause to Krause, who promptly forwarded it to his best friend, famous pedophile rapist Jeffrey Epstein. It's not tangential that our public spat started with Lindsay literally using his privilege as a rich man to get on a stage at a women's conference that he did not organize and blame feminists for silencing men. It's not tangential that he then used his online stage to dehumanize me and stir up men's rights activists to punish me for daring to criticize him. It's not tangential that he did all of this in a clear attempt to protect male supremacy in his movement, to castigate mouthy broads like myself who dared to say, hey, maybe we can do better. Maybe we don't need famous rich men who treat women and girls as objects, as prizes to win and then dispose of when they're inconvenient. Maybe we can build a secular movement through progressive humanistic ideals and good people doing good things for their communities. The idea that someone would think that, let alone say it out loud, terrified Ron Lindsay, just as it terrified Lawrence Krause and Richard Dawkins and Jeffrey Epstein and every other mediocre rich man who was trying to coast by and just enjoy their lives. They were furious because it's like, what do you mean you don't need us? We're rich, we're famous, we have parties on tropical islands where all of our wildest dreams come true. And I don't give a fuck. You guys suck. You're idiots. I hate you. Just look at how scared of me Lawrence Krause is. In one email, he's talking about some letter he wrote to try to defend himself from the BuzzFeed article. I couldn't find it, but I did find this evidence that he spent a lot of time working out exactly how vaguely he could describe me when trying to castigate me as ringleader of the movement to impugn leading male atheists, because Rebecca and her crowd are very, very vicious, and I don't want to start too much of a fire there. Yeah, you know what?
What? I rewrote the last sentence. Center for inquiry, point of the staff member involved was blank, boyfriend of Rebecca Watson, ringleader of the movement. Oh my God. I wanted to be obtuse because Rebecca and her crowd are very, very vicious. Oh, yes.
As Rebecca and her crowd are very, very vicious, and I don't want to start too much of a fire there. Yeah, you know what? You were fucking right to be scared of me, you disgusting, pathetic sex pest. I hope you never again do a lecture where at least one person in the crowd doesn't ask you exactly what you did on Jeffrey Epstein's island. And I hope that Ron Lindsay really enjoys having a little cameo in this latest release, really cementing his legacy as a man who enthusiastically helped run interference for a man who openly and gleefully harassed and abused dozens of women over the course of decades and who kept company with the absolute worst pedophile in human history. Also that Ron could keep his boys club running without the pesky interference of women like me saying, hey, maybe you could stop talking long enough to listen to what we're saying. Hope it was worth it.
Oh, cute puppy. Oh my God. I'm going to link the video in the chat. If you guys aren't already subscribed to Rebecca Watson, you can check her out, see if you like her work. I just feel like this reinforces so much of what a lot of us knew about this space, what a lot of us have experienced in this space. And look, ultimately, and I say this I say this even though I deeply believe in community and a village, that I cannot be a part of a village that also includes these men. And right now, the biggest foundations, the biggest spaces, the biggest places where they are debating politics or philosophy are just rampant, and I'm not interested. So I'm going to fly solo. I'm going to continue doing my own thing until somehow, somewhere, something better happens. But the issue we have to understand is that because everyone's on their own journey of deconstruction, like Rebecca pointed out, a lot of the women in the space are also still on their own journey. And so they too are suffering from internalized misogyny, and they might end up not understanding why we need a separation from these men. And so like, I don't want to fight these women. I don't want to fight these men. I just want to continue to encourage you to deconstruct patriarchy and misogyny and to deconstruct, gender expectations, and to realize that at the end of the day, we're either here to seek truth, we're either here to answer questions of the universe, or what else are we doing here? Like, that's the only reason I want to go to these conferences. I don't want to be your intimate buddy friend. I do not want to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm here to find answers to the universe. I want to go to that place. Not that I'm saying outside of this space, you can't go and find the love of your life or mingle or have a threesome, because I don't care if you're having a threesome, but I'm not going. I don't want to go to these conferences to do these things. So, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to personally put in the effort, but I hope and I look forward to the day when there is somebody better, got to be a woman, who will bring together all of us at a conference where we're actually having serious conversations. Because right now, I just don't know of any space that's doing that. Oh my God, but this is really, really validating. Guys, like, I feel incredibly validated because so many of us have had this experience, and it's exhausting. Like, it comes a point where it's a validation that your personal experience was real. And even more than that you're right to not engage in the bubbles, that you're right to solo. Like, I'm in my solo, study journey. I feel like for the next 10 years, I'm in my research era where I'm just like head down, focusing on gathering information and like understanding myself and philosophically, really engaging with my own framework. And then maybe in 10 years, when I, poke my head back up and see what people are doing, there will be a conference I can go to. There will be a group of people I can actually say like are good people and not find out, holy shit, one of them is in the Epstein files. Because that's what really sucks. It sucks to meet good people that you're like, oh man, I like them. And then boom, you find out, oh fuck. Because that's what keeps happening over and over again. And these men, the audacity of these men to keep being found out time and time and time again, the audacity of emailing and bragging about knowing Jeffrey Epstein, and then what? And then what? When are they going to wake up and realize like you are literally the problem with not only all of humanity, but exactly what's like the problem in these spaces? Can you imagine being part of the group that is literally the problem with the world? Now, everybody is the problem with the world. Like, just don't get it twisted that all of us are the problem with the world. But some people are more the problem of some people really are more of the problem. Yeah, Chet has Noam Chomsky being in the files. Exactly. All these men, bro. And all these women who keep leaving the men over the women. That's a big part of it. Yeah.